Thank you. So I want to start off with a little admission. You see, I cheated on something. And the slides you see above me, I've actually never seen them before. Because I've been diagnosed with a case of what's called extreme slidophobia. It's a real thing, don't worry about it. And I've had it for a long time. And I've spoken around the country, and I've been told, and I've been able to escape the need for slides, but not today. And so when I was told I needed to have 20 slides, I freaked out. And so last week I was stressing out, and I was trying to craft my story to fit the slides, and that just wasn't working. And it dawned on me, my talk is about outcomes versus inputs, and the anxiety I was having about the slides were inputs that were unnecessary to the impact, the outcome I wanted you all to have for my talk. So I said, fuck it. I grabbed 20 random slides, and I sent them to Chad, and now you're seeing them today. So I want to talk to you about outcomes versus inputs, right? And I want to challenge each and every one of you to fight for an outcomes-based work environment instead of an inputs-based work environment. And what do I mean? Let's start with my definition of inputs. They are those universal truths handed down from generation to generation that may or may not make any fucking sense given the current circumstance. So let's take, for instance, 9 to 5, right? I was on the plane last night reading an article about a Harris poll out this week that finds that 63% of U.S. employees think the 9 to 5 mentality is antiquated. And I have to say, I stand strongly with that 63%. When I had my PR agency, I had a client who would send their HR manager around from cubicle to cubicle, office to office, to make sure that the administrative folks and the VPs were in their seats at 8:30 ready to work. That, my friends, is an input-based mentality. And an outcomes-based environment says we don't care when you're in your seat as long as you get your shit done. So 13 years ago, I left the 9 to 5. I started a public relations and ad agency. And I had 4 clients when I started. And I learned that I was a pretty efficient worker. I would get my stuff done by noon. And instead of feeling good about that, I actually felt guilty. You see, for so long, that 9 to 5 bullshit input mentality had been branded in my brain that I felt guilty. And so I started filling up my day and into the night with BS busy work. And at the end of the day, yeah, I felt busy, but I didn't feel productive. I felt overwhelmed. I felt frustrated. I felt like I was building a prison made of bullshit instead of building a business, because that's what it feels like in an inputs-based environment. So let's think about some other unnecessary inputs. How about like 90% of meetings, right? You ever have the phone call to plan for the meeting, to plan for the phone call, to plan for the real meeting? And then you're going to have 3 meetings after that just to debrief, just to make sure. The only outcomes of those is feeding the narcissism of whoever called the meeting in the first place and those 2 to 3 other jackasses who extended the length of the meeting because they like hearing themselves talk. So we could go on and on about all those unnecessary inputs, and I hope you have a very large notebook, because in the coming days, I want you to start making a list of all those BS unnecessary inputs in your workday. You know, over the last 10 years, I've become radically focused on building outcomes-focused days for myself and my clients, because when you set clear outcomes for your day, and then you define the straightest, shortest, simplest route to those outcomes, you realize that 70% of your day has been utter bullshit. And that number might be low, but when your day is filled with so much bullshit, you end up working later or coming in earlier, right? Just to get the outcomes-based projects completed. And when you do that, you're not mentally and physically present when you go home. And when you're not present with your family, yourself, and your friends, I take it something funny is up there. When you're not present with your family, yourself, and your friends, you become unfulfilled. And you want to talk about employee engagement? It's so foundational. When we are judging our people based on whether or not they can adhere to arbitrary inputs instead of allowing them to use their individual talents, their strengths, their superpowers to tackle key outcomes, that's when you have an engagement problem. So that's why I want to challenge each of you to fight for an outcomes-based work environment. And beyond that, of all the speakers you've heard today, right? If you get excited and you're ready really to go out and disrupt, but you know in your heart of hearts when you go to your job, your management is going to say no because they favor simply doing what's always been done instead of truly disrupting, then I want you to speak up or ship out. Because if you stay in that work environment, you're going to be miserable. You're going to feel trapped. And yes, if you stay in that work environment without speaking up, you will be complicit in building a work environment that feels more like a prison than a business for you and your coworkers. I'm Curt Mercadante. Thank you very much.